The capture security director Vexthor of the Krillian Enforcement Agency had served for 15 cycles without incident. His species, the Krillians, were known throughout the galaxy for their strict adherence to protocols and regulations. They had blue-tinted skin that hardened like armor when threatened, three-fingered hands perfect for manipulating complex controls, and a reputation for being absolutely unbending when it came to law enforcement. Today should have been routine. His enforcement station, Sentinel Point Alpha, orbited a minor trade route between the Andara system and the outer colonies. Most days involved checking cargo manifests and ensuring proper documentation. Vexthor liked routine. Routine meant order, and order meant civilization. The alarm on his console chirped softly. An unauthorized vessel had entered the controlled space without proper clearance codes. Vexthor's skin rippled slightly, a sign of mild annoyance. He activated the scanner and examined the reading. The ship was small, clearly civilian, with outdated propulsion systems and minimal defensive capabilities. The registry identified it as the Horizon's Promise, a human research vessel registered to the Terran Scientific Collective. Vexthor's secondary eyelids flickered. Humans. He had encountered them twice before, both times without issue. They were a relatively new species to the galactic stage, having joined the galactic community only 73 cycles ago. From what Vexthor understood, humans were unremarkable. They had no natural weapons, no enhanced physical capabilities, and their technology was mediocre at best. They were known for being emotional and somewhat irrational, but generally harmless. Their main contribution to galactic society seemed to be their unusual cuisine and their peculiar entertainment broadcasts. "Hail the vessel," Vexthor ordered his communications officer, a young Krillian named Zekthar. The view screen activated, showing a human male with dark hair graying at the temples. He wore the standard uniform of a civilian science officer and had the tired expression of someone who had been traveling for many days. "This is Dr. Michael Chen of the Horizon's Promise," the human said. His voice was calm but strained. "I apologize for the protocol violation, Security Director. Our navigation computer experienced a malfunction approximately 6 hours ago. We've been attempting repairs, but our course drifted into controlled space." Vexthor reviewed the transmitted data. The story appeared legitimate. The flight plan showed a clear trajectory that would have kept them well outside controlled space. However, legitimate explanation or not, they had violated regulations. "Dr. Chen, while I acknowledge your explanation, you are currently in restricted space without authorization. Under Krillian Enforcement Protocols, Section 7, I am required to detain your vessel for inspection and verification." The human's face showed clear distress. "Security Director, I understand the regulations, but I need to inform you of special circumstances. We have children aboard this vessel. 8 children, ages 5 to 14 in Earth years. They're part of an educational program, and this detention will cause them significant stress." Vexthor's skin hardened slightly. Special circumstances. Everyone claimed special circumstances. If he made exceptions, the entire system of order would collapse. "All species travel with their offspring, Dr. Chen. This changes nothing. Standard protocol will be followed." He severed the communication and turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Carson. "Prepare a boarding team. Full inspection protocol." From the corner of the command center, a junior officer named Pelmix stood up abruptly. Pelmix was unusual among Krillians, having spent 3 cycles studying at an interspecies university. He had always been interested in alien cultures, particularly the newer species. "Director Vexthor," Pelmix said, his voice carrying a tremor that Krillians associated with fear. Vexthor turned his angular head toward the junior officer. "Sir, during my cultural studies, I specialized in human behavioral patterns. Humans have a very different relationship with their offspring than most spacefaring species. Their children are not simply young members of the species. They represent something more fundamental to human psychology." Vexthor's skin rippled with irritation. Officer Pelmix, I appreciate your educational background, but this station operates on established protocols for good reason. Children are housed separately for their own protection and comfort. This is standard across all species. Your concern is noted and dismissed. Pelmix opened his mouth as if to protest further, then closed it. He returned to his console, but Vexthor noticed the junior officer's hands were shaking as he began typing something rapidly. Probably sending a message to family, Vexthor thought. Pelmix had always been overly cautious. The boarding proceeded smoothly. The humans offered no resistance as they were escorted from their ship to Sentinel Point Alpha. Vexthor watched through the security feeds as they filed into the processing area. There were 23 humans in total, 15 adults and 8 children. The adults looked tired and worried, but compliant. The children ranged in size and appearance. The smallest was a girl who appeared to be barely tall enough to reach an adult human's waist. She had red hair tied in 2 sections and was clutching the hand of an adult female tightly. Vexthor noticed something odd about the adult humans. They were all positioned around the children in a specific formation, creating a physical barrier between the young ones and the Krillian guards. It was subtle, but deliberate. "Begin processing," Vexthor ordered through the communication system. "Adults to holding area 3. The effect was instantaneous and dramatic. Every adult human stopped moving simultaneously. The air in the processing area seemed to change, becoming thick with tension. The humans did not shout or make threatening gestures. They simply stood absolutely still, their eyes locked on the Krillian guards. Dr. Chen stepped forward carefully, his hands visible and non-threatening. "Security Director Vexthor, I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. Please do not separate the children from their parents. Keep us together in whatever facility you choose." Vexthor felt his skin harden further, an automatic response to perceived threats. But these humans were unarmed civilians. What threat could they possibly pose? "Dr. Chen, I understand you are concerned, but our protocols exist for the well-being of all detainees. The Youth Accommodation Wing is specifically designed for young beings. It has entertainment, comfortable sleeping areas, and is staffed by specialists trained in youth care." An adult human woman, tall with dark skin and short-cropped hair, laughed. But it was not a sound of amusement. It was bitter and sharp. "Safer?" Another human, a large male with a scarred face and the bearing of someone with military experience, spoke quietly. "Director, my name is Marcus Webb. I'm a former soldier. I've seen combat on 4 different worlds. I'm telling you this so you understand that I know what I'm talking about when I say this. Do not separate these children from their families." Vexthor's patience was wearing thin. "Is that a threat, Mr.?" "No," Dr. Chen interjected quickly. "It's not a threat. It's a warning. Director, human children are not like other species' offspring. We don't produce hundreds of eggs or have survival of the fittest spawning. Each human child is carried by their mother for 9 months. The bond between human parents and children is not just social or practical. It's biological, neurological, and psychological. When you separate human children from their parents, you're not following a protocol." Vexthor had heard enough. These emotional appeals were exactly why protocols existed, to prevent feelings from overriding logic and order. "Your cultural practices are noted, Dr. Chen. However, this station operates under Galactic Standard protocols, which apply to all species equally." He gestured to the guards. What happened next would be recorded in Sentinel Point Alpha's security logs and later studied by xenopsychologists across the galaxy. The human adults did not attack. They did not scream or cause damage. They simply formed a tight circle around the children, linking arms and bodies to create a living wall. Their faces showed no anger, no fear, just absolute determination. The smallest child, the red-haired girl, began to cry. The man holding her hand, presumably her father, knelt down to her eye level. "It's okay, Sophie. Nothing is going to happen to you." "That's not going to happen, sweetheart." One of the Krelian guards, a veteran named Tokmar, approached Vexthor privately through a secure channel. "Director, I recommend we consult with cultural specialists before proceeding. The human's body language indicates they are preparing for violent resistance, but their biochemical readings show something unusual. They're not experiencing typical pre-combat stress." Vexthor felt a flutter of uncertainty. In 15 cycles, he had never encountered detained beings who showed this particular combination of calm readiness and absolute refusal to comply. Dr. Chen spoke again, his voice carrying to every corner of the processing area. "Director Vexthor, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to understand I'm not exaggerating or being dramatic. If you forcibly separate these children from their parents, word will spread throughout human space within hours. Every human who hears about it will respond, not because of law or duty, but because of something deeper than that. We can't help it." The tall woman added, "My name is Dr. Rachel Okafor. I'm a xenobiologist. I've studied 47 different species' reproductive and child-rearing strategies. I can tell you factually that humans invest more biological resources, time, and emotional energy into each offspring than any other spacefaring species. This isn't a cultural quirk, Director. It's an evolutionary imperative. Every human adult, whether they have children or not, is hardwired to protect human children. All of them." Vexthor made his decision. He had not built his career by yielding to emotional appeals from detainees. "Proceed with standard protocol." The guards moved forward. The humans tightened their formation. The children were pulled into the center of the group, completely hidden from view. It took 42 minutes. 42 minutes of carefully, methodically separating adult humans from the children they protected. 3 guards were injured in the process, though not from deliberate attacks. The humans simply resisted with every fiber of their being, making the guards work for every centimeter of ground. The children screamed. The adults were silent, their faces wet with tears, but their eyes burning with something that made even veteran Krelian guards uncomfortable. Finally, it was done. The 8 human children were escorted to the youth accommodation wing. The 15 adults were moved to holding area 3. As the blast door closed between them, Vexthor heard one of the children, a boy who looked to be about 10, speak in a clear, calm voice that seemed far too mature for his size. "They're coming for us." Vexthor dismissed it as childish bravado. He returned to his command center, filed his reports, and prepared for the routine processing of the human's vessel and documentation. The entire incident had taken less than 3 hours. In his quarters, Pel Mix sat at his personal communication terminal. He had sent 17 messages to various contacts in human space, trade networks, and diplomatic channels. He had included every detail of what had occurred, along with his formal resignation from the Krelian Enforcement Agency. He knew what was coming. He had studied human history, human psychology, human culture. He understood something that Vexthor and the other Krelians did not. There were lines you did not cross with any species. For humans, their children were not just beyond that line. They were in a completely different category of sacred. Pelmix locked his door, gathered his essential belongings, and waited. He estimated he had perhaps 12 to 16 hours before everything changed. He was wrong. It would happen much faster. In the youth accommodation wing, 8 human children sat in a room designed to be comfortable and welcoming. It had soft furniture, calming colors, and entertainment systems loaded with content from hundreds of species. None of the children touched anything. They sat close together, the older ones holding the younger ones. Sophie, the smallest, had stopped crying. Asked Marcus, one of the older boys. "Not long," answered Keiko, a girl of 13 with sharp eyes. My mom works for the diplomatic corps. She made me memorize emergency protocols, Sophie said softly. The aliens. They're about to learn, Marcus replied. In holding Area 3, Dr. Michael Chen sat with his back against the wall, his head in his hands. Dr. Rachel Okafor sat beside him. She asked quietly. Chen checked his internal chronometer, a small implant that many space travelers used. The distress signal our ship's AI sent was highly specific. It included keywords that trigger automatic escalation protocols. I estimate first diplomatic contact in 8 hours. No, they'll wait. Chen looked at her with tired eyes. Then every human within 50 light years will know that human children are being held against their will by an alien government. She nodded slowly. Not just war. Total war. Marcus Webb, the former soldier, spoke from across the room. They think we're weak because we don't have claws or armor or poison. He laughed without humor. Above the station, in the darkness of space, something changed. If anyone had been monitoring the long-range sensors at that precise moment, they would have seen the first flicker of faster-than-light travel signatures appearing at the edge of the system. The humans were coming, and they were bringing friends. The Reckoning. The first ship appeared 8 hours and 17 minutes after the separation of the human children from their parents. It materialized at the edge of the system in a flash of displaced energy that lit up every sensor on Sentinel Point Alpha. Vexthor was reviewing detention paperwork when his senior sensor operator, Kilvex, called out in a voice that cracked with alarm. Director, we have an unauthorized vessel entering the system. Vexthor looked up from his reports, his skin beginning to harden reflexively. It's human, sir. Military configuration, frigate class. Designated as the UNSS Determined. The view screen activated, showing a human female in a dark blue military uniform. She had short black hair, dark skin, and eyes that seemed to look directly through the screen into Vexithor's core. Her expression was not angry, it was not afraid. It was absolutely calm, and somehow that was more terrifying than any rage could have been. This is Captain Sarah Okonkwo of the United Nations Space Service vessel Determined. I am here regarding the detention of 23 human civilians, including 8 children. I am Security Director Vexthor. Captain Okonkwo, your vessel has entered Krillian-controlled space without authorization. You are in violation of— Director, Captain Okonkwo interrupted smoothly. I am aware of the regulations. I am also aware that you are currently holding 8 human children in separate detention from their parents. Vexthor felt his skin ripple with irritation. The detainees are being processed according to standard galactic protocols. Captain Okonkwo's expression did not change. Director, I am going to be very direct with you because time is important. Captain, I do not take orders from human military officers. Your civilians violated Krillian space. They are being processed. Something flickered in Captain Okonkwo's eyes. 2 days. Captain Okonkwo was silent for a moment. Then she spoke again, and her voice was even quieter than before. Director Vexthor, I'm going to explain something to you. When I received word about this situation, I was 17 light years away conducting routine patrol operations. I immediately diverted my ship, pushed my engines beyond recommended safety limits, and traveled here as fast as physically possible. Vexthor said nothing. Because those children are human. I've never met them. I don't know their names. They're not related to me in any way. But they're human children, and they're afraid, and they're separated from their parents. That makes them my responsibility. Her voice remained calm, but now it carried an edge like sharpened steel. Behind me, there are currently 43 more human vessels in faster-than-light travel heading to this location. Military ships, civilian ships, private vessels, cargo haulers. Vexthor's skin hardened completely. No, Director, it's a statement of fact. I couldn't stop those ships if I wanted to. No one could. Because when humans learn that human children are in danger, we respond. All of us. It's not a military operation. It's not a government order. Kilvex called out again, his voice higher. Director, I'm detecting multiple faster-than-light signatures. Many signatures. Vexthor pulled up the sensor display on his personal screen. His 3 fingers trembled slightly as he scrolled through the data. Ships were appearing one after another. Human vessels of every size and class, all broadcasting the same message, requesting status of detained human children. Look at the ship registrations, Director. Most of those aren't military vessels. That cargo hauler that just arrived? It's captained by a grandmother named Helen Takahashi. She was 3 days into a 2-month trade route. She turned around and came here because she heard about the children. That civilian transport? It's carrying 47 volunteers, teachers, medical personnel, counselors. Another voice crackled over the communication system, this one coming from the station's internal network. It was Pelmix, speaking from his quarters. Director Vexthor, this is Officer Pelmix. Vexthor wanted to deny the request, but something in Pelmix's tone made him accept. Sir, I have been monitoring communication channels across the galaxy for the past 8 hours. The situation is developing far beyond this system. Data flooded Vexthor's screen. Messages from across known space, all related to the detention at Sentinel Point Alpha. The Saldorian Trade Consortium had suspended all commercial contracts with Krillian enforcement stations, citing ethical concerns. The message included a simple statement. The Saldorians have 17 offspring from each spawning. We cannot comprehend human attachment to individual children, but we recognize its reality. The Vryn Empire, humanity's most vocal critics in galactic politics, had issued a statement that Vexthor read 3 times to ensure he understood it correctly. The Empire has substantial disagreements with human expansion policy and territorial claims. However, we would never interfere with human family units. This is fundamental decency. The Traders Guild, the massive organization that facilitated commerce across 300 star systems, had blacklisted Sentinel Point Alpha. No guild ship would dock there until the situation was resolved. Even the mysterious architects, a species so advanced they rarely acknowledged younger civilizations, had sent a message. Director, Pelmix continued, his voice strained. I also intercepted communications from human space. There's a mobilization occurring unlike anything in human history. It's not organized by their government. It's spontaneous. Millions of humans are volunteering for something: rescue, support, relief operations. Their military is receiving so many volunteers that they're having to turn people away. Vexthor sat down heavily in his command chair. This is insane. They're just children. They're not in danger. Director, Captain Okonkwo's voice came through again, and now there was something in it that might have been pity. You separated human children from their parents. You took confused, frightened children and locked them away from the only people in the universe programmed to protect them. In human terms, that's not just a crime. Vexthor's communication officer interrupted. Director, we're receiving a priority message from the Galactic Council. A holographic projection materialized in the center of the command center. It showed High Chancellor Moraton, the ancient Velix who led the Galactic Council. She looked exhausted, her crystalline features dulled with stress. Director Vexthor, she said without preamble, I am contacting you on behalf of the full Galactic Council. We have been in emergency session for the past 6 hours. High Chancellor, with respect, I am following standard. I know what protocols you're following, Director. I also know that you've created the most significant diplomatic crisis in 40 years. Do you understand what's happening? The human ambassador to the Council stood before us and explained that if those children are not reunited with their parents within the next few hours, there will be war. Moraton's voice was sharp. I have witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. I have seen species destroy themselves over resources, territory, and ideology. She leaned forward in her holographic projection. The human ambassador showed us their history. Do you know what humans did 300 years ago when a group of their own species took 23 children hostage on their homeworld? They mobilized their entire nation. They spent billions of their currency units. They hunted the perpetrators for years across their planet. That was humans attacking humans, Vexthor protested weakly. Exactly. That's what they do to their own species when children are threatened. Vexthor's skin had lost all color. Release them. All of them, immediately. Apologize. Offer compensation. The communication ended. Vexthor sat in silence for a long moment. Around him his crew waited. Finally he spoke. 67, Kilvex replied quietly. No, sir. They're just waiting. All of them in a loose perimeter around the station. Not threatening, not advancing. Vexthor pulled up the visual display. The sight that greeted him would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. Dozens of ships of varying sizes and capabilities, all human, all maintaining perfect discipline, all simply waiting to see what he would do next. He activated the station-wide communication system. All personnel, this is Director Vexthor. Initiate immediate release protocol for all human detainees. Reunite the juveniles with their family units immediately. Vexthor looked at his second-in-command with tired eyes. Tell them we made a mistake. Tell them we didn't understand. In the youth accommodation wing, a Krillian care specialist named Venala approached the 8 human children nervously. They had barely moved in 8 hours, staying close together in a tight group. Children, Venala said gently, we are going to take you back to your parents now. Sophie, the smallest child with red hair, looked up at Venala. Her eyes were dry now, and there was something ancient in her young face. We told you they were coming. The walk from the youth accommodation wing to holding Area 3 took 4 minutes. The human children moved as a group, still holding hands, still protecting each other even though the crisis was ending. When the blast door to holding Area 3 opened, time seemed to slow. The 15 human adults stood as one. For a frozen moment, parents and children stared at each other across the space. Then Sophie broke from the group and ran. The man who had held her hand during the initial detention dropped to his knees and caught her as she crashed into him. Other children ran to their parents, and suddenly the sterile detention area was filled with the sound of crying. Not frightened crying this time, but the release of unbearable tension. Dr. Michael Chen held his daughter while his wife wrapped both of them in her arms. Dr. Rachel Okafor embraced her 2 sons. Marcus Webb held his teenage daughter and kept repeating, I told you I wouldn't let them take you. Captain Sarah Okonkwo watched the reunion through a live feed being transmitted to her ship. She had tears running down her face, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. Her communication officer, a young ensign named David Park, spoke quietly. Captain, we're receiving stand-down orders from Earth Command. Acknowledge the orders, Okonkwo replied. On Sentinel Point Alpha, Vexthor stood in the docking bay and watched as the human families boarded their repaired vessel. Dr. Chen paused before entering and turned to face the Krillian director. Dr. Chen, Vexthor said, I need you to understand. I was following protocols. Chen looked at him for a long moment. I believe you, Director, but intention doesn't matter when it comes to our children. He gestured to the families boarding behind him. Every single one of these adults would have died to protect these children. Not because it would have been heroic or noble, but because it wouldn't have been a choice. When you took our children away, you didn't just break protocol or violate rights. I'm beginning to understand that, Vexthor said quietly. Good. Then let me tell you something else. Every human who came to this system today, in those 67 ships, felt exactly the same way we did. They didn't know these specific children. Most of them will never meet them. But the moment they heard that human children were separated from their parents and held by aliens, they felt it personally. Chen stepped closer. That's what makes us dangerous, Director, not our weapons or our ships or our tactics. It's that when one of us is threatened, all of us respond. He extended his hand in the human gesture of reconciliation. You made an honest mistake based on ignorance. I accept your apology, but make sure this never happens again. Vexthor took the hand, feeling the warmth of the human's grip. It won't happen again. You have my word. I'm already transmitting new protocols to every Krillian station. Chen nodded and turned to board his ship. Sophie, holding her father's hand again, looked back at Vexthor one more time. We're not scary because we're strong, she said in her small voice. Then she was gone, following her family into the horizon's promise. 2 hours later, the human vessel departed Sentinel Point Alpha. Behind it, 67 human ships of various types and sizes formed a loose honor guard, escorting them to the edge of Krillian space before dispersing back to their original missions. Captain Sarah Okonkwo remained until every ship had departed safely. Then she recorded a message that would be transmitted throughout human space. This is Captain Okonkwo to all Earth Command vessels and civilian ships. The crisis at Sentinel Point Alpha has been resolved peacefully. All human civilians are safe and returning home. I want to thank every person who responded, whether you made it to this system or not. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. Today, we learned something important. The galaxy didn't understand us. They saw our lack of natural weapons and assumed we were weak. They saw our emotions and assumed we were irrational. Our strength isn't in claws or armor. It's in our bonds with each other. Our rationality isn't the cold logic of pure calculation. It's the deep understanding that some things matter more than survival, more than profit, more than convenience. The galaxy is learning about us. They're learning that we can be patient, diplomatic, and peaceful, but they're also learning that there are lines you don't cross with humans. Our children are beyond that line. In the weeks that followed, the incident at Sentinel Point Alpha became a case study in every galactic diplomatic training program. New protocols were established specifically for handling human families. Cultural sensitivity training was revised to include extensive education about human parent-child bonds. Vexthor remained as director of Sentinel Point Alpha, but the experience had changed him. He became one of the leading voices advocating for better cross-species understanding in law enforcement. He never detained another human vessel without first consulting with cultural specialists. Pelmix received formal recognition from the Galactic Council for his attempt to prevent the crisis. He left Krillian service and became a professor of xenopsychology, specializing in human cultural studies. And throughout human space, the story spread, not as a tale of military might or diplomatic victory, but as a simple truth that every human understood instinctively. We protect our children, all of them, always. Sophie kept the blanket that the Krillian guard had given her during her detention. Years later, when she was grown and had children of her own, she would show it to them and tell them the story of the day the galaxy learned what it meant to take human children. They didn't know, she would say, but they learned, and they made sure everyone else learned too. Her children would ask. The humans come, she would answer with a smile. And across the galaxy, in station command centers and diplomatic offices and military headquarters, beings of 100 different species would remember the sight of 67 human ships appearing one after another, not in rage or vengeance, but in simple, implacable determination. They remembered, and they understood. You don't touch human children, ever.